Welcome to section 2.2.3. We're going to be talking about solving by rewriting. And what this is going to do is going to help us solve these problems a little bit easier. So this is a very important section on how to make solving equations easier. So if we're looking at the equation of x squared plus 2.5x minus 1.5 equals 0. What we can do is we can work with this and get rid of the decimals. So to get rid of the decimals, when there's one decimal place, that's the tenths. So we can multiply everything by 10. So what you're going to get is 10 times x squared plus 2.5x minus 1.5 equals 0. So like I said, we multiply everything by 10, even the 0. So you give the 10x squared plus 25x minus 15 equals 0. Now you could have also, because it's a 0.5, it's a half, you could have also multiplied by 2 in this case, but you can always multiply by 10. So if we multiplied by 2, we'd get 2x squared plus 5x minus 3 equals 0. And now, in part B, we're going to solve. And you'll see how those two equations we just have above are related. So for 10x squared plus 25x minus 15 equals 0, always look for the greatest common factor first. In this case, it's a 5. So it's 5 times, and when you factor out the 5, you get 2x squared plus 5x minus 3 equals 0. And then you can actually divide both sides by 5. So it gives us 2x squared plus 5x minus 3 equals 0. And you can see that was the equation we got when we multiplied by 2. And now we're going to factor this. So for factoring it, multiply the first and last. We get negative 6x squared, and middle term is 5x. Signs are going to be opposites, positive and a negative. So to get a 6, we have a 3 and a 2, a 6 and a 1. Now to get that positive 5, positive 6x and a negative 1x. I'm going to use that grouping method again. 2x squared and the negative 3. And then we have our positive 6x and our negative x. It doesn't matter which of those goes first. Common factor of the first two terms is 2x. So we factor that, we get x plus 3. Of the last two terms, because that number is a negative, the third number, take out a negative, in this case a 1, x plus 3 equals 0. Now, look at the common factor of x plus 3. We'll write that first. When we factor that out, we're left with a 2x minus 1. There we go, we factored it. Now to solve, set each factor equal to 0, x plus 3 equals 0, 2x minus 1 equals 0, so you get x equals negative 3, and you get x equals a positive 1/2. Those are our two solutions. You could check both by going back in the original equation with your calculators, and they both work. Next, in problem number 2, we're going to, once again, keep solving by rewriting. Now, these numbers are huge. 100x squared plus 100x equals 2,000. What we could do is we could divide everything by 100. So that gives us x squared plus x equals 20. Now, it's a quadratic. In order to solve it, we have to get it equal to 0, so subtract 20 from both sides. X squared plus x minus 20 equals 0. And now we can factor it. It's a lot easier to factor because the leading coefficient is 1. It's just an x squared. So x and x. Numbers that multiply to negative 20 and add to 1, we get a positive 5 and a negative 4. And now to solve, x plus 5 equals 0. X minus 4 equals 0, so x equals negative 5 and x equals 4. There's our two solutions. If you go back into the original equation, you'll find out that they both work. Now, number 3, we have all those fractions. We don't want to work with those fractions if we don't have to. So what we can do is we can multiply everything by the common denominator. Remember, fractions represent division, and to undo that division, we can multiply. So we're going to multiply by the common denominator of 4. Once, twice, 3 times, and 4 times. I'm going to write this out. So what I'm doing is I'm doing 4 times 1/2 x squared plus 4 times 3/4 x minus 4 times 1/2, and that equals 4 times 0, which is 0. Now those are 4 over 1s. I'm going to use that as a placeholder. We always simplify before we multiply. The 2 becomes a 1, 4 becomes a 2. So it's really just 2 times x squared, which is 2x squared. Here the 4's cancel, so we're left with plus 3x. 2 becomes a 1, the 4 becomes a 2. So it's negative 1 times 2 times 1, which is negative 2, and that equals 0. No more fractions. And now we can factor. Multiply the first and the last term, we get a negative 4x squared. Bottom, we get a positive 3x. Now, to multiply to a negative 4 and add to 3, the signs are opposites. So we have a 4 and a 1, or a 2 and a 2. To get that positive 3, we have to have a positive 4x and a negative 1x. Using that grouping method, 2x squared, negative 2 in the other spots, we have a positive 4x and a negative x. Common between the first two terms, 2x. So that leaves us in the parentheses x plus 2. The last two terms, you can see that third term's negative, take out a negative 1, and then you have x plus 2. You know we're on the right track because we have the x plus 2 in the parentheses. So that's our common factor is x plus 2. When we take that out, we're left with 2x minus 1. Set each factor equal to 0, x plus 2 equals 0. 2x minus 1 equals 0, so x equals negative 2, and then x equals 1/2. Those are our two solutions. Our goal here is to get rid of fractions or to make the problem easier to work with. On the next page, please. Problem number 4. Our common denominator is 5, so we can get rid of the fractions by multiplying each term by 5. 5 once, twice, 3 times. Now the 5's cancel, we're left with 2x. These 5's cancels, we're left with plus 3 equals 5. No more fractions. Subtract 3 from both sides. 2x equals 2. Divide both sides by 2. X equals 1. And you could go and check that as well. Now in problem number 5, we need to multiply by the common denominator. Now that common denominator is the least common multiple. If you think about the multiples of 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. The multiples of 4, 8, 12, 16. And the multiples of 6, 12. So that common multiple, that common denominator is 12. We're going to multiply by 12 once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Now, I'm going to write that out again just so we can see it a little bit clearer. It's 12 over 1 times 1 over 3x plus 12 over 1 times 1 over 4 equals 12 times x, don't forget that, minus 12 over 1 times 1 over 6. Simplify before we multiply. The 12 becomes a 4, 3 becomes a 1. We get 4x. 12 becomes a 3, 4 becomes a 1, plus 3 equals 12x. 12 becomes a 2, 6 becomes a 1, minus 2. No more fractions. We can subtract 4x from both sides. At the same time we're doing that, we can add 2 to both sides. So we get 5 equals 8x. Divide both sides by 8. X equals 5 over 8. And you can use your calculator and substitute that in, and you'll see that that does work. Now for problems numbers 6, 7, and 8. They're more complicated because our common denominators are more complicated. So now, with the variables, our common denominator, we need to take into account each part of the factor. So we need an x that takes care of this one and this one. And then we need an x minus 1. So that's our LCD. Once again, we're multiplying each term by x times x minus 1. There's 3 terms. We're multiplying everything by x times x minus 1. I'm going to write it out. X times x minus 1 over 1 times x minus 3 over x plus x times x minus 1 over 1 times 2 over x minus 1 equals x times x minus 1 over 1 as a placeholder times 5 minus x over x. Now, it looks messy, but when we simplify, it's not as bad. The x's cancel, so we're left with x minus 1 times x minus 3. The x minus 1's cancel, we're left with plus 2 times x. These x's cancel, so we're left with equals x minus 1 times 5 minus x. No more fractions. So we're going to multiply. So when we multiply x minus 1 and x minus 3, when you multiply and simplify, you get x squared minus 4x plus 3 plus 2x. And when you multiply over here, you're going to get x squared. Sorry, let's multiply those out. This is kind of messy. X times 5 is 5x minus x squared minus 5x plus x. So now when we combine, that's not a 5x, that's a minus 5, excuse me. So we combine on the left-hand side, we get x squared minus 2x plus 3 equals, now it's a negative x squared plus 6x minus 5. Now, we want to get everything onto the left-hand side. So we're going to add x squared to both sides. We're going to subtract 6x from both sides. And we're going to add 5 to both sides. So we're left with 2x squared minus 8x plus 8 equals 0. Now what we can do is we can factor out a 2. So it gives me 2 times x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 0. Much easier to factor. So we can divide both sides by 2. So we're just then x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 0. So now when we factor those, we get x and x. Now to multiply to 4 and add to negative 4, we have a negative 2 and a negative 2, which is the same as x minus 2 squared equals 0. Set x minus 2 equal to 0, x equals 2. That's our solution. Now we're going to check it to make sure that it worked. So to check it, we're going to substitute in. It's going to be 2 minus 3 over 2 plus 2 over 2 minus 1 equals 5 minus 2 over 2. So we have negative 1/2 plus 2 over 1 equals 3/2. So we get a common denominator, negative 1/2 plus multiply that by 2 over 2. You get 4/2 equals 3/2. And you can see 3/2 equals 3/2. So x equals 2 was a valid solution. We want to do that when x is in our denominator. We want to check our solutions. Now for problem number 7. Our common denominator is going to be 2x times x plus 1. Multiply each term, all 3 of them, by 2x times x plus 1. And just so we can visualize a little bit better, it's 2x times x plus 1 over 1 times 3x over x plus 1 minus 5 over 2x times 2x times x minus 1, x plus 1, over 1 equals 3 over 2x times 2x times x plus 1 over 1 as the placeholder. So now we're going to start simplifying before we multiply. The x plus 1's cancel, which is nice. So it's 2x times 3x, which is 6x squared. The 2x cancels, so it's negative 5 times x plus 1. So it's plus negative 5 times x plus 1 equals, the 2x's cancel, 3 times x plus 1. So we have 6x squared minus 5x minus 5 equals 3x plus 3. So once again, we want to get everything on the left-hand side. I'm going to subtract 3x, and I'm going to subtract 3. So we have 6x squared minus 8x minus 8 equals 0. I can factor out a 2. 2 times x squared minus 4x. Oh, sorry, that's a 3x squared minus 4x minus 4. You can divide both sides by 2, so you just end up with 3x squared minus 4x minus 4 equals 0. So now we can factor this. And that's our next step, is going to be factoring this. So to do that, just like we've been doing, multiply the first and the last term. We get negative 12x squared, and at the bottom are negative 4x. Now our signs are opposites, and now the factors of 12, 6 and 2, 3 and 4, 12 and 1. Now to get that negative 4, we have to have a negative 6x and a positive 2x. Using that grouping method, 3x squared, the negative 4, and then we have our negative 6x and our positive 2x. So the common factor is 3x, so the first two terms. So we have 3x times x minus 2. Factor out a positive 2, and then we're left with x minus 2 equals 0. So we end our common factor of x minus 2, and then we factor that out, we're left with 3x plus 2. So now, what we're going to do is set each factor equal to 0. We set each factor equal to 0, we get x minus 2 equals 0. 3x plus 2 equals 0. So x equals 2, and x equals negative 2/3. There's our two solutions. Now, in the interest of time, I will tell you that they both work. The main thing we want to make sure is we don't end up with division by 0. I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to come back for another video in part 2 to finish up the last few problems. Thank you.